news of the day and something worth noting, and that is that Mycah Pittman has already had hip surgery and is out for the next, 4 months, I think they announced, 4 to 5 months?
I think a typical recovery time could be up to 6. Yeah, that's really significant when you're talking about the special teams game and the receiver rotation. I mean, I would go special teams first because it just felt so nice to have a punt returner that you didn't have to worry about him putting it on the deck. And so that would be a concern right out the gate for LSU if Mycah Pittman's healing and recovery time is on the longer end of the estimation.
Yeah, one thing I will say about him is he proved himself to be an extremely hard worker. He's a tough, tough kid. I actually look at the injury from that vantage point, Tom. I look at it, or the surgery from that vantage point. We don't know how long he's going to be out in terms of number of games. He could be back in time for the first game of the year. We don't know. If you project out that amount of time, he could. He could be back by July and be ready to go by that first game. But who knows? He may not be back till week 3, week 4. Again, speculation. We do not know. Everybody's injury and surgery recovery time is different.
Is it strange that the first place my brain went when I read about this on warchant.com, as you can right now at warchant.com for more information, but who the hell is going to be our second blocking wide receiver? I don't know that we have candidates that are lined up to fill that part of the requirement for the roster. Like, there's going to be somebody like a Winston Ryder or a Darian Williamson who could take the catches and the yards. But yeah, I like how physical we play in the run game. And Johnny Wilson's one half of that, and Mycah Pittman's the other half of that.
That's the toughness of which I speak. He's so tough. And there was a high level of sacrifice that Mycah Pittman revealed a year ago, which may have been more impressive than anything he did on the field in terms of the accumulation of receptions or touchdowns or any of that. It was really more about a willingness for a kid who I think people wondered when he transferred from Oregon. The thought was maybe he was, speculation was that he was unhappy with the amount of touches that he was going to get or had gotten. And, he had been injured there. And so you just wondered. But one of the least selfish guys on the team, when you just compare and contrast what was expected of him and then what he did as a blocker for everybody else a lot of times, and his willingness to do that, to engage in that. And he's short in stature, but he's a thick, strong kid. He's very, very physical. He's tenacious. He's tough-minded. So you want him back for a lot of reasons, but you really want him back because of the toughness that he brings, and especially for a game like LSU or a game like Clemson on the road.
Yeah, in the interview I did with Ron Dugans at the luncheon a couple weeks ago, I asked about Johnny and Johnny's ability to set the standard of, if you're not going to bring it as a defensive back, he'll block you into the first row.
Yeah.
He doesn't care. And he could have 2 targets before that moment or none or 12. He's still going to do that thing. And Coach Dugans was quick to kind of correct me and say, well, Mycah was the first one to set the standard in the receiver room that this is how we play. And that's got to be a part of the conversation moving forward. You do have a ton of tight end bodies that you can rotate out there if you want to, but that lets you know what's coming if you're a defense. If a Marquiston is out there on the perimeter, or a Morlock is out there, or Jaheim Bell, you could kind of be clued in that maybe there's something happening in the way of a bubble game. With Mycah out there, his size suggests it's going to be a throw, not a run, and yet, here we go, little flare or a little run to the outside, and he's got you locked up. So it's just, when you are a championship roster, these details matter. Like, every little bit of it. You've got a variety of receiver targets, but who the hell is going to set the physical tone on the other side? And I look forward to watching camp now for a different reason. I thought we were just going to watch the receiver room to see who commands the targets, but now it's who fills the role.
There are a lot of guys, though, to fill the role that were on the team a year ago that you're expected to either make a jump or we're in the process of making real progress to getting more playing time. Talking about a Portier or Williamson or people like that you've referenced. These are all guys that are going to play more anyhow, and they were part of that receiver room, and that receiving core really was something that we all doffed our cap to because of their willingness to block. All of them blocked. Now, Mycah stood out because he's so physical and so tough, but really the tone has been set. I think that the culture, it has been ingrained in anybody that's been in that room that they're going to have to block.
You just got to be good at it, too, on top of it, though. It's a skill.
No, there's no doubt.
You know what hurts?
It's not an easy skill to acquire either.
We're like for McLean to have stuck around now, because he was good at that.
He was really good.
That would have fit very nicely.
I think he left for reasons other than I think he wanted more catches. So he was always willing to block.
Sure.
It wasn't going to change anything for him. He's like, no, I'll block. Can I get some more catches? And I don't know that he was going to.
If it takes longer for this recovery, he might have been on the field. But that's the thing that the coaching staff has to continue to tell a lot of these guys across different position groups that, look, you might not be getting the lion's share of targets, rushes, snaps just yet. But wait, there's a lot of dudes, a huge swath of guys that are going to be going to the NFL level next year. So just hang around a second, or you're a couple injuries away from getting the opportunity anyway.
We talk about the balance all the time, what these coaches are going to have to do with a loaded roster, and that soon there'll be the ones that are preyed upon for their players, just like they've preyed upon others up to this point, because they've had to obviously refurbish this roster with players that are plus players that can easily replace those that are returners. Now that's getting more and more difficult. They're always going to be good at it, I think, because they've established a culture of and analyzing the types of players that come in and fit in a locker room really well, also improve your level of play. But I think now that you have an excess number of those in the trenches, you probably have moving forward, again, another opportunity within the receiving core and running back room to see some folks defect.
So the question I would ask you then is because you were there for the pajama days of this football camp so far, which you can run 7-on-7s and have a good idea of who's who. Who impresses you the most in that receiver room? And it doesn't have to be the first person. I mean, if you were ranking the top group of 3 or 5, because that's how it's going to play out, you're going to rotate 3 or 5 guys primarily, and then from there you go. Who stands out to you? I mean, Johnny's got to be in the conversation somewhere in that group, of course. But how would you rank it out at present before we get to, weeks on end of full contact?
Well, I think we've moved to a place where Johnny Wilson is your best receiver. I agree with that. I wouldn't say otherwise. I just want to see him get more consistent catching the football. And it's really specifically a certain type of catch. It's the simple catch. It's the easy catch. It's the first down that Jordan throws him on 3rd and 6, and ain't nobody around him because he did everything right, and it's the right play call, and Jordan read the defense properly, and he puts it on with nobody near him, and inexplicably he drops it. Those are killers in big games against good teams. You got to make those plays. We're able to make it up against the lesser tier teams, and Johnny did a great job of really rebounding nicely. You never really saw it shake his confidence. When he dropped passes, especially the easy passes where one might look inward and wonder, how do you drop that chain-moving catch in a big situation at midfield, and now we're punting? How do I drop that ball? He never really did that. He always got past it very quickly, and invariably he'd make a catch that you'd go, wow, that was a really difficult and important catch. It was potentially a game-changing catch. That was 3rd and 9, double-covered, one hand got both feet down kind of catch. Shocking. That was, he picked that off the ground nearabouts. Those kinds of catches. So it will be interesting to see. So Johnny, to me, is still, despite having that one element of his game that's got to get better, he's your best receiver. And then from there, I think you have a bunch of candidates. I mean, I don't know that you have a solid number 2 that you say, this guy's better than everybody else. You got a lot of candidates, don't you think? I mean, yeah. Mycah would have been, as you're saying. Williamson seems to be a guy that they're in love with. I mean, they really like him. They bring him up a ton. We saw that great game that he had against Boston College. The physical tools are there. If he takes it a big step, he could very well vault up into that, upper tier of this receiving core. I like Portier. I need him to be more consistent, but he's a big body like Malik McClain. He embraces blocking. If he can mature and take another big step forward, I think he can be a huge asset for you. I don't know what Akeem Williams is going to be this year. Body type-wise, he looks ready to play, but a lot of time freshmen are swimming. He's looked like he's swimming so far early on at camp, but that's not new. That's not abnormal.
I think there's a different level of football shape that you play at the next level, too, that's catching up to him.
Yeah.
And that's normal. That is totally
normal. Yeah. I don't see. Winston Wright's a guy that, let's see. Yep. Right? You can't not mention Winston Wright. He's eager to be out there. He has something to prove. He's excited to play. He's really well respected. Looks like he's got his speed back. He's cutting really well. He's the most mature in terms of playing time in the Power 5. Have you done it? Yeah, he's done it.
He looks stout physically as well. That's not a slender underneath guy like a Ja'Kai Douglas, who has his role as an over-the-top lid lifter gadget player for you. But not all slot receivers are created equal, and Winston looks a little bit more stout. I got to tell you, it's not about expectations for this season yet. But through 1 week, somebody who's just very impressive to me, he looks like he's got it, is Dre Jacobs, Vandrevius Jacobs.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I've got to give Michael Langston full credit on this because we did so many shows leading up to signing day. He said, everybody's talking about Hakeem, and I get it. You should. But don't sleep on this other guy we brought in. Vandrevius Jacobs is impressive, and it translates. It just reminds me some of the breaks he makes and some of the speed coming out of a break of a young Rashad Green. I remember seeing that little separation, that little nuance of how to break off a route, and he looks polished, where Hakeem looks more raw at that part of the game.
So there are 3 candidates to really get you excited that you might say, all right, what is this guy going to be right here, right now with an opportunity? And the guys that can be something right here, right now to make up for an injury at the receiver position. And again, we don't know. Mycah could start the year and be just fine. We don't know that. We do know that he went through hip surgery. We do know he's going to be out for an extended period of time. We don't know what the rehab will look like. Hopefully he's back in time for LSU. But Jaheim Bell is going to play a huge part at tight end. He's a sort of a mix of receiver, running back, and H-back. That's what he is. So he's going to get a lot of looks. But a guy that, again, how far can he come in this spring, in the fall, who has all the athleticism in the world and is the guy that I talk about all the time, but admit he's not ready, and maybe he will be, and I sure cross my fingers that he will be, is Deuce Spann. Deuce Spann is a better athlete than all of them. All of them. He better athlete than Johnny Wilson, better athlete than Mycah Pittman, better athlete than all of them. So how quickly? I mean, he had all of last year. Early in the season, they used him quite a bit in the quick game. He had a drop on a deep ball early in the season. You're like, oh, man, that's a touchdown. But, okay, it's happened. He had the episode on the sideline where he and Mike had a come-to-Jesus conversation and handled it well. They went right back to him in that game, by the way, in an important moment, just to let him know, we still believe in you, but you gotta handle these things better than you're handling.
You gotta tighten it up.
Tighten up. But he did. And he came into camp. Look, at the end of when we watched the workouts, I thought he looked great. And then when he get into practice, I thought he looked really good again in terms of energy, focus. He looks more polished. Still has ways to go, but he looked more polished.
He did a good job of developing just last fall.
Yeah.
Like from the beginning, the first impression we had, which was, needs work.
Needs a lot of work, but he's come a long way to where it's not.
With the hands looking more like a receiver's hands versus a dude who you just plug in at the position because he can run real fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you, I guess the answer we just gave everybody out there about this question is we're not real sure, but we have candidates.
And you wouldn't in years past.
Didn't 2 years ago.
Punt returner is going to be a question too. Is that Winston's job? Because he was a kick returner for West Virginia, very good at it. Again, they've got a lot of good athletes that they can throw at the problem. It's a real difference maker. It's just like having an excellent center fielder in the major leagues. You just breathe easy when there's a ball driven out to left center. Oh, he's got it. I don't even have to look. That's a catch.
Vandrevius Jackson, by the way. You brought him up?
Jacobs.
I said Jackson, sorry. You brought him up, and I love him too. Right off the bat, he stood out. But that's somebody that could answer your question in terms of punt returner. Could maybe, but he's a freshman.
He's tiny too. He's tiny.
175, yeah. I mean, he
relative to the room, which is kind of a nice thing. We used to say
when we bring up Darian Williamson, people forget he's 6'3", 200 plus pounds. He's somebody I think because of his age and his body type, I'm rooting for him. If somebody has to fill that role, I'm kind of rooting for him.